Hello again, everybody, to BBC. Something has come up in the past day or so that I've revisited. And when we begin our meditation classes that we share in the local community, one of the first things that we share is that as human beings, we spend a lot of time taking care of our bodies. And so we would go through sometimes some of the description of whether going to the doctors, going to the dentist, we go biking, we do weightlifting, we do yoga, we do massage. We spend a lot of time taking care of these bodies. But then when we would sit there and go, well, what do we do about taking care of our minds? Well, there's therapy. And then the people that are there are coming because they want to learn how to meditate, because they're realizing that there's this huge imbalance between how they take care of the external part of themselves, but not the internal side of themselves. And so this idea or this thought came up because yesterday we spent some time with some very dear friends of ours. They offered some lunch to the Abbey community. And in the process of the conversation, they shared that they're considering, kind of thinking about spending some time doing retreat or really practicing, really wanting to deepen their meditation practice and trying to create the causes and conditions to be able to do that. And so my mind immediately went to this initial teaching about how it's so important that we spend the time working with our minds to bring that balance of body and mind as human beings more into synchronicity. And so in the process of their sharing, what also came to mind was this past retreat that Venerable taught on, the concentration retreat, where she brought up what the conditions are needed to be able to do a retreat that bears fruit. And during the course of the day yesterday, the one friend that's really wanting to do this, mostly to increase his concentration and to develop a lot of joy in his practice, and for the long-term goal of liberation and awakening. And so during the course of the day, Venerable Tarp and I were sharing with him, and we were kind of going through, we got almost all of the list of the conditions that are most conducive for doing retreat. And it just brought them back to me, not only for anybody in the world, but also for myself, that I need to remember that although I have some of the most conducive circumstances for retreat and practice, that there are ones that I also still have to be aware of and to practice. So I was very inspired by his heartfelt aspiration. He's committed, he's taken time off for a considerable amount of time, and he's just beginning to figure out what this is actually going to look like. And so he first and foremost, and so I want to go through over the next few times what some of these conditions are, and to really be inspired by his efforts, and to also see for myself what is going to have to unfold for him in some way, and how it unfolds for all of us here in the community and anybody who want to deepen their practice by doing retreat. And what will be some of the obstacles, and what will be some of the fruits of that effort. And so, and they're all quite practical, but they're harder to do than it sounds. But it also takes a lot of joy, and it really focuses oneself on this motivation, is why do I want to do retreat, and what do I have to do to create the causes? So the first thing was that, and talking with him, is that he wants to find a favorable environment. An environment that is safe, that's healthy, that's quiet, a place where he can really unplug, a place where he can clear the decks, and it may not be in his home, it might be someplace else. And so and for us here, we've got the Abbey. I mean, we've got probably one of the most conducive environments, although at times it's been pretty busy and it's been kind of noisy. It still is an extremely wonderful, conducive environment for doing a retreat, which was what we have every winter, and we do many times during the course of the year. The next thing, when Venerable Tarp and I were sitting with him, and this is a crucial one that I don't spend a lot, I think I take it for granted, and he was quite interested in knowing more about this one, is that it's need a clear understanding of what to practice. Getting excited about doing a retreat and then kind of going off with some vague notion of what that's supposed to look like, it's not going to bear the kind of fruit that we want. We need to know the object on what we're going to meditate on, or what topic we're going to do. We're going to have to figure out what type of session will be, what kind of structure, so it can really be conducive for a little bit of break, a little bit of focus, how to take care of ourselves physically as well as mentally. So that, but it's important that we have the structure so that we're not spacing out and we're not kind of wandering off, or it's so vague that we don't have some sort of form to follow. Because some of us are quite self-disciplined when it comes to structure on meditation and retreat, and many of us need a very disciplined, specific kind of structure with times in and time out, so we can really take care of ourselves and keep on track. So he was quite interested about that and figuring out what that would look like and what does he need to study up on. And what was really beautiful is in the beginning of his sharing, he looked towards Venerable and he said, well, what do you think? What do I need to do? And that's one of the huge pieces if you want to have a clear understanding of how to help create the cause and conditions, but what to practice is to turn to somebody who's a spiritual mentor, someone who has some experience, somebody that has some wisdom in it, and then to follow through on what their suggestions are. To be able to read very specific books on how to cultivate concentration and what the steps are and what the objects are as well. And then I was going to do just the third one here for today. There are 6 of them total. And the third one, I think, being a lay person, he was becoming also quite aware that it's to be free of coarse desires and to have few of them. And what would he have to do before starting out a retreat is to look at the disadvantages of some of the desires that would be coming up. And I was thinking about, for the kind of mental habits or the things that we do to sort of comfort ourselves and reward ourselves. So maybe it would be, a few weeks before retreat or a few months is to start backing off on the coffee, start backing off on the news media and calling friends and checking in, almost like gently, like they were using the word backpedaling out of their lives so that they could sort of get the sense stimulus and the needing of external objects to take care and to nourish and to support them, to start slowly backpedaling and kind of letting that go. And then so that when they're in the middle of retreat, because they're still going to arise, the sense desires, the sense objects are going to still arise, but to have some idea on how much we're hooked into them. And so here, even at the Abbey, the comforts and then the foods and how I find myself distracted by sense objects, the beauty of the place, the weather really affects my mental state and how I can have to somehow learn how to work with that in mind, because it really does distract me quite a bit. And so it was a really lovely experience to share and to support, and also reminding myself and all of us who have this deep longing aspiration to do retreat, is that we have to create the causes and conditions to have them. And then, to be realistic about, and I'll talk a little bit more next time about how to be realistic about them, but also to stretch ourselves outside of our comfort zone, because there's a fine balance there, because we don't want to have the disappointment of putting it way out there and then finding out that we didn't have the capacity or the ability to fulfill our deepest wishes in retreat. So I'll continue with that the next time that I see you, but to think about have you ever thought about wanting to do retreat, whether it be just for a weekend or whether it be for the rest of your life? And what would you have to do to create the cause and conditions for that?